Hey, what's going on, everybody? Today is February 1st, 2024. You are listening and watching the Daily AI Show live. And today we are going to be talking about some of the sort of amazing stories that have been coming out in the last, not just year, but few years as it relates to cancer and how AI is playing a role in that. And so I would love to, if you guys are cool with it, just sort of start with my sort of personal story with this. I think all of us basically have stories about somebody we know, or perhaps ourselves with cancer. In my case, it was my mom. And so, my mother was diagnosed with breast cancer sometime around, I would say, 2000, 2001. So I would have just graduated from college. It was in that time. And she beat it. So she beat the breast cancer, got her 6-month checkup. And then, then you get checkups every year, basically, after that, or every 6 months. It's pretty, it spans out. And I remember her talking to me at the time and saying, like, I beat it. I'm not out of the woods. And the thing that this sort of show kind of starts with for me on a personal level is I very much remember having a conversation with my mom and her saying, I just have to outlast till there's a solution. She was very confident that given enough time, there would in fact be treatment or actual cure for breast cancer. And just like all cancers, there's many, many different types and variations that go along with that. And I don't remember exactly which one first was HER2 or HER4, something like that. I vaguely remember the name of it. Anyway, 2006-07 comes around, and she gets some tests, and now the cancer is back. But it's not just back in one spot. It's millimeters throughout her entire body, brain, lungs, breast, right? And so aggressive treatment, remember taking my mom to the chemotherapies and watching her just get, obliterated by those as people do. They're obviously tough on the body, and watching her go through that process. And anyway, cut the long story short, mom passed on 8/8/08. It was actually the opening day of the Chinese Summer Olympics. It was that day. It's obviously 8/8/08 is obviously an easy day to remember too. Had gone into hospice. We knew the end was coming for quite some time. My mom knew the end was coming for quite some time. Silver linings to that is everybody got to have the conversations and everything else. But it sticks in my head that statement my mom said, knowing that she wasn't out of the woods. She went 5 years cancer free, by the way. And then it came back as it does, doing all the tests that she's supposed to do. She did everything right by the book, by what the professionals were saying to do. And it wasn't enough. And inevitably, my mom wasn't able to outpace cancer. She couldn't last long enough, but she believed that she had a chance of that. And that's been true every decade since, modern treatments of cancer and stuff like that. But recently with AI, and I'd love to hear your guys' take on this. Recently with AI, we're starting to see maybe that hockey curve pick up pace. You see more stories. And whereas, Dennis Leary back in the 90s had a famous, comedy album called No Cure for Cancer. In my mind, that's what I always thought. I thought someday somebody would come out with a research paper and say, we did it. We cured cancer. But that doesn't turn out to be the answer. In fact, it's probably 1,000 small answers to 1,000 problems. And AI is actually being the tool, I believe, to help us go in and pick off one by one. So some cancers actually are getting faster treatments. Now there's some that actually have a very high likelihood of survival and long life, whereas others are still much more problematic. So I don't want to take too much time. It's like 4 minutes of an intro there, but I just wanted to sort of set the steam because, like so many of us, and my mom's not the only one, my grandparents have died of cancer and stuff like that. But like so many of us, this has affected probably all of our lives in some way. And to see the hope of what AI could possibly do in some of these instances, and perhaps for our own health in the future, is just super encouraging. So one to start it off that way, and then get into some of the really cool stuff that's out there right now.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So let me just put a slightly different frame on that, which is around the story of live long enough to intersect with the solutions. I think in the early stages now, the process of early detection, which is really important to giving you longer runway, is going to be aided by AI assisted diagnosis. So, cell biopsies which normally take, humans looking at them and trying to understand what's the actual problem going on here with these cells, what's the subtype of cancer that's involved. Those will be accelerated. And it'll probably be even simpler. AI can encompass a large range of markers and indicators that aren't just the view of the cell that's been done from a biopsy to detect what type of cancer it is. So that's one of the mechanisms that I think will help us in that fight against cancer, though that's not a solution to this really difficult problem, which is cells out of control growing and the immune system not realizing that those are bad cells.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Andy, I think you've identified where AI is currently having the greatest impact, right? So we've seen recent stories of new AI techniques or techniques that are being used in conjunction with machine learning and AI to help identify cancer early, right, or earlier, right? So I was mentioning before the show, I came across a story where researchers had come up with an AI system for testing for ovarian cancer that has a 93% accuracy rate, right? And I think anyone who's familiar with cancer is identifying early. So all of our techniques for combating cancer and trying to eradicate it is finding it first, right? Making sure that we know that your system has it. And so all of these AI technologies that I've been researching that's where that focus is. If we can find it early, we can treat it early, and then that increases the survivability rate. So, each technology seems to be identifying a particular type of cancer that they're focusing on because each one has its own requirements for identification and eradication and things like that. But that seems to be the focus for all of these techs is high accuracy, high speed. There was one paper I saw where they had developed a technique called they're calling iStar, and essentially its focus was on the speed of identifying various biopsies and that pattern, so that they could do it in essentially 9 minutes instead of 32 hours. That means that's just more time that can be applied to identify more cells and just go through that process. So I think that's where those that focus for the AI development is.
So that talks about the ways that AI advances are going to help across the board in ways that are not AI advances, right? If you can identify it in 9 minutes, and you can have that in the doctor's office or then the person comes in and talks to you about the result of the thing and you make the appointment right there. And anyone who's gotten diagnosed and had treatment, right? There's weeks in that process, which yay for early diagnosis, right? Yay for catching it early. And when you're doing it, you're like, oh yeah, no, I'm doing really good. I'm catching it early. Why are you letting me wait 3 weeks? Right? Yeah. That kind of thing could help survival rates. That tiny little innovation.
I was going to go with it too, Beth. I mean, that's a great point. I can definitely remember, not so much me. I remember my dad going through this. This is years ago with Cigna and stuff like that. I'm sure things have changed, but the toll it took on my dad, who wasn't the one that was sick, as the main caregiver of my mom. I know you know a lot about that, Beth. You talked about your mom, I think it was as well, right? With being the primary caregiver. Yeah, but just the primary caregiver. The toll it takes mentally, emotionally, physically, the whole deal. And that stress of that process of hurry up and wait. I definitely see how AI is helping with early detection, but also crucially, it's got to make the cost come down. Because if the cost comes down, you can't, until the cost comes down, you can get, at least in the States, you're not going to get the health insurance to cover it, which then it means to be out of pocket. Case in point, in my household, my wife and I, one of us has early, like a reason in history, in genetics and stuff like that, to have an early detection, but we're not at the 50-year-old threshold to get it. So it doesn't get covered. So unless it comes out of pocket, it doesn't get done. And now you're saying, like, I could be catching this early, but there's not a means for me to do it unless it's out of pocket. Now, my wife and I might be able to do that. Maybe we can't. Lots and lots and lots of people around the world simply cannot. So I think you're actually absolutely right. If you're able to run these computations, the biopsy gets put into, an AI algorithm or whatever, and using something like a Google DeepMind, which I know they've been working on it, they're able to process billions of rows of data in a matter of minutes. To your point, Beth, maybe that means that there's conversations being had immediately about what was initially found. There's nothing wrong with the experts also saying, by the way, we're going to go in there as ourselves and, look at this as the experts that we are and make our own determinations. We're not fully relying on AI, but this is an early response to this based on everybody that looks kind of like you with your blood markers and biomarkers and everything else around the world since the time we start taking this data. That's what we're talking about, the power of being able to use this for speed and accuracy. And I believe if that's the case, it's got to be able to drive costs down, because now it's not some really, really expensive test where you're paying very, very high rates for these experts, these specialists who should get paid what they're being paid to sit in labs and do this work that is probably very hard to do and accurate, certain machines and things like that drives the cost up. So I definitely see that. I definitely see how this is a value add, because not only are we getting to a solution faster, hopefully we're getting to it cheaper, which means that the insurance is going to open up and say, yeah, it's like getting blood work. There's no reason you can't just get your annual physical blood work. And also it will run through, a bazillion biomarkers that it needs to do that currently would just be cost prohibitive, and most people aren't going to get. So even if you are, Andy, you're somebody who's you would call yourself, I think, self-described as like a biohacker. You focus on that a lot. So even for somebody like you who is actively trying to do this, it's frustrating to think that sometimes we don't have the tools or the ability to get the results to make the moves we want to do, even if we're the ones paying attention to it. I know you're about to say something, Andy. Go.
Yeah. So a couple points there. That's an indictment of the for-profit, insurance only payer system that we've got here. But there are other obstacles to the advancements of AI. And one of them that I want to mention is that AI, in order to be effective, has to have a very large body of data and current data in order to make advances. And there isn't really, outside of the state of the National Cancer Institute, there isn't a unifying body in the for-profit medical institutions to unify that data so that AI can analyze it and then understand what the sort of the multidisciplinary factors are that are resulting in cancers, and to sort of think about and think through in that voluminous way that AI can all of the different factors. So where's the data coming from to actually build the AI systems that can help advance this? That's, as we all know from all of the things that we've ever talked about, in order to get going on an AI project, the first thing you have to have is the data to feed the AI so that the AI can do its magic. And I'm concerned that there just isn't a centralized process by which that information in the medical community is being unified into a single AI process, or multiple models, but shared data at least for that. Right. I may be wrong about that. I'm not involved in medical at all.
So part of what I'm wondering, and I don't know the answer to this question, I'm literally wondering, we are having a Circle Back episode a week from Friday. So maybe the wondering will have come to fruition. Listen to that one. But when President Biden took office, he instituted something that I think was called a moonshot for cancer, because his son Bo died of brain cancer. And I wonder if that's a part of it. Like, is that the government coming in and doing an incentive for collecting data? Because that's what it does really well, right? I mean, government is great at some things and bad at others, but this is a good one.
Right. Yeah, no, I like with most From my limited understanding, most of these kinds of projects are to support the studies and the research and things like that. Again, Andy, I know there are organizations that have been around specifically about cancer research. I don't know if they're collecting that data yet. All of the studies that I've come across for AI specifically in cancer research is they've done it's an enclosed, it's like a bottle system, so it's all within that study. But I can see some major advances to the whole process if they did have a unified research database that they could access.
There may be such a thing where there's voluntary sharing of data. But there's a disincentive for a team that's hoping to develop a treatment that will be remunerative to that team and to the things, to share the progress that they're making. That's a problem in the for-profit healthcare system.
100%.
I agree.
One of the things I came across was a company called, I'm going to guess it's Assembly. It's ET, like et cetera, ETCEMBLY. Assembly? Don't know. I think you should have names for companies that are easy to pronounce. That's what I think. But regardless, this company, it says demonstrating this Oxford-based biotech firm, Assembly, recently achieved a world first creating an immunotherapy drug with the help of generative AI. What I found in this article that was really interesting is they gave a good way to understand this, like the idea of, again, preemptively attacking with good healthy cells with immunotherapy. So one way to imagine this is that every cancer cell has a unique lock, and the white blood cells are like a pile of keys. Finding the key that fits the lock, and the cell could be destroyed. But unfortunately, there are hundreds of millions of keys that need to be tried. Sorting all this through all these possible combinations, even traditional computer simulations, would take a long time, possibly longer than the patient has. But with generative AI, like Emily, this was a language model that Assembly created. New TCR sequences can quickly be created and tested in simulation based on all the existing TCRs and patient outcome information held in its training data. So sort of back to what we were saying before, like whereas maybe you go to get cancer treatment and maybe it's a well-respected, you're in a big city, and that city, here in Tampa, we have a Moffitt Cancer Center. I don't know, world renowned, but definitely renowned within the United States, is a massive cancer center. And my wife worked there eventually as a dietitian, as her first job out of her master's program. Well respected, well loved within the community, huge employer in the area. But let's say you go to Moffitt and you go to get training, or you go to get treatment or whatever. Again, maybe to your point, Andy, if that in the past, I feel like, that particular set of doctors, that particular set of specialists is going to look at you and look at some of your, key vitals and things like that, and do the tests and run the things. But that's different than saying, but we can also look at your unique, I guess, TCR sequences, mine versus millions of others, and built into these data sets, these trained models now. And it's spitting out and saying, well, you're actually not that unique. You're unique in the sense that this is a unique combination, but there's actually other people who have similar combinations to you. And now we only have 1,000 keys to test instead of 1 billion. And that's massive. That's a massive, massive improvement or headway towards, finding a solution. And in this particular case, immunotherapy, which isn't, again, not a one singular cure for cancer. Everything we've talked about so far is different areas that AI can go in and help, in a sense, from early detection to using the language models to all this stuff. And you hope that the sum total of all of this is obviously back to the moonshot. Their moonshot was that they want to, let me make sure I get this right, an ambitious and hopeful initiative of the U.S. government to reduce cancer-related deaths rates by 50% by the year 2047.
Yeah,
23 years from now. So not tomorrow.
They weren't even thinking about AI when they put that together. Like that might be possible. Because the other thing that you were talking about, Brian, was changing the funnel shape on both ends. Right. Mm-hmm. So you're testing like 1 million things. Now you're testing 1,000. But even on the other end, AI can test more than one at a time. right?
Sure.
So your test, so you have 1,000 that you have to test, and as a human, you'd be doing 1, maybe 3, and as an AI, maybe you're doing 100, maybe you're doing 500, right? Now that's a rapid answer. That again, like we were talking about before, that changes the dynamic of what's possible in the conversation just with AI's capability, that like now capability, right? Not crazy advances. AI can localize and find data that is similar to other data, and AI can then test data at multiples at a time.
Yeah,
I think
it's
AI is
important, too,
probably assisting with gene analysis of individual humans as well. You can go send your DNA off to 23andMe, and they can detect whether you have a propensity towards certain kinds of cancers based on your genetic profile. Well, that's a long process. Now imagine that there's an AI that's out there ready and waiting, and you just basically take a piece of hair, if you have one, put it into some
Save your hair.
machine. That machine talks to an AI and comes back with your complete genetic profile with a particular attention to those segments of your genetic profile that are predictive of certain kinds of cancers. That kind of forecasting, sort of preventative action assisted by AI, it won't be rejected by, like, even at my advanced stage, if I go in and say, look, I want to be genetically tested for, any possibilities of, higher probabilities for certain cancers, my practitioners are going to say, go away. You're healthy, you're fine. You're also on your death's door, so to speak. But
you have secrets.
Guys, we go back there. But if it could be made less expensive and faster, that you can determine these things. And by the way, that raises this bigger question: is, do you really want to know? Well, yeah, you do want to know if there is a therapy that's following it up, with AI, where you can actually advance your successful lifespan. So I'm hopeful that I'm going to be, even despite my advanced age, I'm going to be able to last long enough that these AI-assisted cancer treatments and other, debilitating degradations of the human body, all of those things can be corrected, so that I can achieve what is probably the maximum possible human lifespan. For various reasons, even the researchers in advanced longevity don't believe that getting beyond 120 years is practical. But 120 years is more than double what the typical average lifespan was just, within the, almost my lifetime for global population.
Yeah. I mean, for sure. I like what you said too, Andy, because this is something I read in some of the research too, which was, AI is great and all this, but what also comes to this is sort of what we were talking about, which is more communication with the patient, or the person that has the possible markers, the genetic markers, or the diagnosis, or the early diagnosis, or the pre-diagnosis, whatever you want to call it. But I mean, I have fought with this just in my lifetime of being an adult in the last 25-ish years that I wasn't under my parents' care or whatever, and fighting. I mentioned this before, like fighting to get copies of the results of my own tests of my own body, that used to be a lot harder, and now there's more tools that are making this easier, and it doesn't exist anymore. The company doesn't exist anymore, but I used a company called Wellness FX for years, that was popular in the CrossFit community, and it was a shame when they shut down, because I use that tool all the time, because going into a physician, I had to be the one that was smarter than the physician. There's no way him seeing 60 people a day or whatever it was going to have a better idea than I was. So I used to walk in and be like, here are the markers. And it goes back 7 years. Now let's have a conversation about this. Not everybody does that. Not everybody's going to be like that. So I like this idea of AI bringing the conversation to the room, so that if there are things that people can be doing now, just like you would for pre-diabetes or stuff like that. Look, you have pre-diabetes. Kelly Clarkson just came out in the news. She said it in the news. I'm not, telling her business, but she said, look, she just recently lost weight. She said, look, my doctor said, look, you're on your way to pre-diabetes. It scared her, whatever. She made adjustments and whatever. She's leading a healthier lifestyle. So I look at it the same way. If you're now able to have conversations and sort of own that data and have a conversation with your doctor, as opposed to a doctor talking to you, which is usually the problem. Now you come in smarter. Now we have these tools. We can all jump on ChatGPT. I've done it. I told stories about this before when I had to do stuff for like a possible surgery for my neck. While the doctor stepped out of the room and came back in, I was 10 times smarter than before he walked out of the room because I used the ChatGPT app. And I was like, I got questions for you. And he's like, let's go. He like leaned into it. He loved it, We now have these tools on our side too, on the patient. We have tons of tools to become more educated. It's not just WebMD anymore. And that used to be the deal. I looked it up on, my dad would say, I looked it up on WebMD. Okay. What does it say? And it would scare the crap out of everybody, with whatever the answer was. So I just love this idea of just having more of a conversation where the patient is equally as informed as the physicians and no information is being held back. So together they can come up with a plan that makes sense for some of this pre-treatment or things they could be doing in their lifestyle to certainly help them, increase the odds, I guess, or whatever you say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like that idea of having enough empowerment, and having that knowledge that you can bring. For me, I'd be focused on like diagnostic data and things like that you were talking about, Brian. But I'd love to be able to provide that to, I guess, for lack of a better term, shortcut the, analysis process for my physician. It's like, here, I have my last 7 years of diagnostic data.
Yeah.
Here you go. Then that's less pressure on them to make sure that they ask all the right questions. I mean, they should still do that, of course, but if I can help you do your job better, hells yeah, I'm totally for that. No,
absolutely.
I think AI can also assist oncologists who are practicing in the world of oncology by assisting them in keeping up with the global advances that are being done by research centers of excellence all around the world. That's a full-time job, as we know, just even trying to study AI. Like if I'm also having to see patients every day and make real-time decisions about what cocktail mix of chemotherapies I'm going to apply to this particular person, having something that's digesting all of that information and summarizing it and personalizing it to that oncology practice, that information pipeline, I think, could be incredibly valuable in improving the treatment efficacy at the patient level.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah, Andy, you're talking about like dissemination of information and all that kind of stuff. I think AI in general, just even outside of this context, is there's a real strong and real good opportunity there to help with that dissemination of information, whatever the field is.
Yeah, indeed.
So, we got just like 2 minutes, 3 minutes left here. I'm just curious, next couple of years, obviously this show and many others have been talking more about AI since ChatGPT, but as always, AI has existed for many, many, many years prior to, the explosion of ChatGPT and it being more in the global conversation. But as you look at the next couple of years, are we moving closer and closer to, let's say, like a blood prick test, something that some hold device like you do for body fat analysis, some quick blood scan that you're doing at home that is basically a device that people could be using for routine checks of cancer? I mean, do we feel like this is coming? Is this something that's, inevitable? And also, I don't know, what do you guys think we're looking at as far as where this all progresses in the next, I don't know, 5 to 10 years?
Yeah.
I feel like we just went through I'm speaking from a first world country. So, but my sense is the majority of people who just went through things in the United States, Europe, Australia, other places that just went through it too, are now familiar with shoving something up their nose and like scraping, right? Like most people have had, and then you put it in the thing. So let's do like a 3-fer. prick your finger and grab some blood, spit in a tube and get some spit, like scrape your nose. Like what else can you test? We're now ready to provide samples because we have been doing this at home now. And like that is just, I mean, let's just collect that data, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's just submit that.
I mean, we all see the commercials. You can do stool samples at home, you know, put it in boxes, send it back. So, like, it's we know.
I wasn't even thinking about that.
Level, we can certainly do some blood and tests.
My pee. Yes, here we go.
Well, Beth, I think you highlighted a crucial part of this whole process, and that is adjusting or acclimatizing the behavior of people towards doing X, Y, or Z, right? So we were not born knowing how to use a smartphone when the smartphone came out. We had to learn how to use the smartphone. And like to your point, we all learn how to do a nose swab now. Now, you know, do it on a regular basis now, you know, before they, you know, go travel or whatever. But having that comes down to, like Andy's point of dissemination of information. It's training people, getting them used to going through these process. And yes, I would love it if it just came down to we can test everything through a quick blood test, you know, and everyone could just like, there you go, and just pass it on, and we can have results in 10 minutes. I mean, COVID tests right now are a 15-minute process, right? If we can just get it at home with that level of ease, and people can do this or have a device that does all of these right off the bat, that would be a huge step towards early detection of any kind of, you know, disease or problem or, you know, genetics or anything that of that sort. So, yes. So to answer your question, Brian, do I see anything in the next 5 years? Most definitely. You know, the more people are used to doing at-home tests, those at-home tests can just be developed for whatever purpose of identification. And then that information can be set off. If you can have your app on your phone, you know, or if you can just link in with your medical professional and have, you know, that anonymized data sent off to a centralized database that could be used for research, then that speeds up the whole process. I'd love that. I'd love to have a whole suite of tests done in 9 minutes, and then I don't have to worry about it till next year.
Yep.
Any
So
last thoughts, Andy?
we've had a bunch of comments too. So maybe you want to get to those, Justin. It's not all of them, but
Let's talk comments here.
Yeah, well, it's probably it only shows LinkedIn user on our side, unfortunately, but just, you know, some of the, like, you know, talking about as we were talking through, just leaving some comments like as we were talking through it. So using blood work, biopsies, body scans, gut health. Nope, wrong one. Gut tests. My wife would love that answer. My wife is a huge proponent of gut biome and how we've probably just barely tapped what that means in the gut biome. So how that affects cancer, I don't know, but it's certainly part of the conversation. And then just, you know, behavior, people, processes, progress. And then we'll do one more here. The viability of logistics, mobility is an important for accuracy, which I agree, as well as many other comments. Thank you for all the other comments you put in there and kind of following along with our conversation.
We love that.
Any last thoughts, Andy? Did you get a chance, or do you want to say anything else?
I think we've wrapped it.
Sounds good to me. All right. Well, listen, guys, that's it for today. Hopefully you got something out of the conversation. Again, we're certainly no experts. We're looking at this as, you know, individuals who are following along with AI, and we wanted to have this conversation, and we'll revisit it, obviously, if there's any new discoveries along the way. Tomorrow we're going to be talking about Runway ML and doing a deep dive of that. And then obviously we'll be back all next week with a new set of shows. So until then, guys, we will see you tomorrow. Have a great Thursday.
Aloha.
Bye.